Transformation notes, rotations. So what is a rotation? A rotation is a transformation that is turned about a fixed point. The fixed point that we are going to use is going to be the origin. So if we look at our picture of a smiley face, all right, if we start here in the first quadrant, we say, all right, look at the orientation of the smiley face. Now if we rotate it, say 90 degrees counterclockwise, it's like if you picked up your paper and just turned it to the left 90 degrees, you see how the head becomes sideways? Right? If we go the other way, we could go 90 degrees clockwise from the first quadrant into the fourth quadrant, and it spins the other way. Okay? And then 180 and 180, doesn't matter which way we go, 180 degrees. All right. So there are some rules that we follow for each one of these rotations. So we have a rotation from the first quadrant to the second quadrant, counterclockwise, that's 90 degrees. From the second quadrant to the third quadrant, to the second to the third, 90 degrees, or from first to third is 180 degrees. And then from first to fourth is 270 degrees. And then it's just inverse the other way around as well. Alright, so what happens if we are going 90 degrees clockwise or 270 degrees counterclockwise? So we're starting in this first quadrant. 90 degrees clockwise will put us in this fourth quadrant, okay? Or 270 degrees counterclockwise, again, is going to put us into that fourth quadrant. So the first thing you always want to look for when we're doing some type of rotation is where are you starting and where are you going to end up? Okay, so that's the first main thing. Now let's look at our rule. Well, XY. If we rotate 90 degrees clockwise or 270 degrees counterclockwise, the image, what we're ending with, is y, comma, negative x. So we swap the x and y values, and what was originally the x value becomes negative. Alright, so let's look at this. We have triangle ABC. Point A is at 3, 1. Point B is at 3, 4, and point C is at 1, 1. Alright, now if we apply our rule, y negative x, A prime becomes, well, this y value becomes our x value, and then this x value becomes our y value. But we have to put a negative sign on it, right? Because this is originally positive, so this one has to become negative. So our new A value is 1, 2, 3, right? So our image for A, right, our A prime, is at 1, 3. Okay, let's look at B. So B prime becomes 4, negative 3. You plot this at 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. There's B prime. And lastly, this is point C. C prime becomes 1, negative 1. C prime. Okay, and a real easy way to check this is that if you take your coordinate plane, right, and if you just pick it up and turn it counterclockwise, that position and that orientation of the shape, that is what it should look like. Alright. What if we're rotating 180 degrees? Well, like what we said before, 180 degrees doesn't really matter if we're rotating it clockwise or counterclockwise because we're going to end up in the same position. Okay, but we're starting with this XY point, and if we rotate it 180 degrees, it becomes point negative x, negative y. So again, point A, which is at 3, 1. Point B, which is at 3, 4. And point C, which is at 1, 1. If we apply our rule of negative x, negative y, A prime becomes negative 3, negative 1. B prime becomes negative 3, negative 4. And C prime becomes negative 1, negative 1. Okay. Now let's plot these. Negative 3, negative 1, negative 3, negative 4, and negative 1, negative 1. So A prime, B prime, C prime, and we connect, and there's our triangle. There's our image. What if we are rotating 270 degrees clockwise or 90 degrees counterclockwise? Well, we're starting in this first quadrant, right? If we're rotating 90 degrees counterclockwise, this puts us in quadrant 2, okay? Or if we're rotating 270 degrees clockwise, again, puts us from 1 to quadrant 2. So always think, where am I going to end up? Okay. All right. So point A, again, is at 3, 1. B is at 3, 4. And C is at coordinate point 1, 1. We apply our rule. Negative yx. Okay. Now let's look for A prime. Well, was 3, 1. We take the y value, we put it in our x position, and we change its sign. And then we take our x value and we put it in our y spot. Okay. So A transforms into A prime at negative 1, 3 when we rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. That's A prime. Okay, so let's look at B prime. B prime would become negative 4, 3, and C prime would be negative 1, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And then C prime, negative 1, 1. And then connect. And we have our triangle. Okay. So one way that we can remember this, if you draw yourself a coordinate plane, okay, and just draw one tick mark on everything. If we start with a coordinate point at this mark right here, well, this is at 1, 0. Okay. If we rotate this 90 degrees counterclockwise, our point becomes, well, 0, 1. Do we see how the black to the red, right? They just swapped positions. Okay. What if we go from that point another 90 degrees, so 180 degrees total? Well, now we're at negative 1, 0. Okay, similar to look at how we started with that black dot, 1, 0. Now we're negative 1, 0. Okay, if we go another 90 degrees counterclockwise, so 270 degrees counterclockwise total, well, now we're at 0, negative 1. Okay, and if we rotate back 360 degrees, it's just back to where we started. Okay, so there's this pattern that you can follow depending on how far you're rotating. And that pattern is how our x and y swaps. The other thing you have to remember or take into account is what quadrant you end up in, right? Because if we're in this first quadrant, our coordinate points are both going to be positive. If we rotate into the second quadrant, our x is negative, our y is positive. If you rotate into the third quadrant, both are negative, and in our fourth, we have a positive, negative.